After reading a lot about struggling marriages and hearing our clients share their never ending challenges in their marriages, and seeing marriages among friends stumble and fall, we felt inspired to write this post and to share this video from the point of view of, from my perspective, from a husband who has failed marriage once and made a promise never to do it again, and from the perspective of my wife who is there at my side as we're seeking God's help to do it right this time. This is John Golda and my lovely wife Tanya,
Hi.
and we're with Solid Rock Marriage Restoration. So hopefully you can experience some of the things we've learned and find a lot of value in this video. And I've experienced the pain of divorce. I've had my fair share of challenges in our current marriage as well, and now we're happily married for over 18 years. And yes, she's the love of my life, and she's Tanya. And so I know everyone's got a different story, but hopefully some of you can learn through some of our failures and pitfalls in marriage, and you don't have to make the same mistakes we did. Or maybe how we struggled and got through it can help inspire you and help you get out of your struggles. More than 20 years ago, before I ever met Tanya, my first marriage ended in divorce. I didn't have a good foundation or proper expectations for us in terms of how to have a lasting and thriving marriage. We pursued different goals in life. She wanted to pursue a career, and I wanted to pursue a family. We failed to understand each other's dreams and desires on a deep level. We didn't know how to be a godly husband or godly wife, and we just assumed we were on that path because, hey, we go to church together. Our parents have been married a long time, that kind of stuff, the examples we had. But we failed to establish that meaningful emotional and physical intimacy and started drifting apart, eventually losing that special connectedness and that feeling that husbands and wives have of being in love. And it wasn't long until she initiated a path towards divorce. And I was exhausted, depleted. I didn't know what was required to stop that and to save my marriage. And so I didn't do enough. And that ended in divorce. And I spent the next several years healing from that divorce and wondering where I went wrong as a man and as a husband. So as I pursued a deeper relationship for myself with God, that's when I found and married Tanya. And like I said before, we've been married for over 18 years. The first couple of years, I think, for most couples, naturally go well, or are much easier to go well, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So it's like you're spending all that time courting and getting to know each other, and you don't have all the burden of some of the busyness that comes later with children. And in our case, we moved away from home, and so she was further from family, and just life gets busy, and you start to have to deal with the hard parts, not just the getting to know you and sharing time, but where do we fundamentally find that we're maybe not fully aligned? We have disagreements, and we have to align now. And so, the first couple of years, like I said, went well, but later we started experiencing what to me were familiar signs of what previously was a failing marriage for me. And so, Tanya and I were not communicating properly. We often misunderstood each other's perspectives and intentions. We're different people, a surprise, and we have different personalities. And if I perceive her through my own lens of my worldview, I'm missing the picture. That's not a good representation. We tended to focus on our own wants and needs and desires. I think that's fairly common. I don't think that's something that is unique to us. We didn't know what to expect from one another, and we didn't define a common vision really for most of the details of our lives together. It was more of a high level. We were both pursuing God. We both wanted family. We both wanted multiple kids and that sort of thing. But it wasn't really a crystal clear image of what our marriage should look like. And as an example, I was forceful in my communication with Tanya on important topics, and it significantly hurt her emotionally. She felt overpowered and feared at times being honest with me about unresolved issues.
Yes. Yes. John has a dominant personality, and I have a very laid back personality. So I would typically avoid contact. Conflict.
Conflict. Yeah.
And so when we would talk, I would just shut down, and that really wasn't the right answer, but that was my mechanism. And so then it would build up inside of me, and I would just have my moments where I would explode, and that's not helpful.
Yeah. And I, was not successful in leading her through that and really connecting with her. I didn't understand all the dynamics of how my communication style was impacting her different personality and her different style. And, that was something we learned later, and very helpful, by the way.
Yes.
It was, we struggled sometimes to forgive each other completely. I mean, there were lots of examples where we forgave each other for different things, but there were some deeper wounds that were unresolved, and it's hard to really get that forgiveness in your heart if you haven't even resolved the wound yet. It can be done, but it was hard, and we weren't getting there. And so we started to really drift apart emotionally. It was several years.
Yeah, definitely.
And we found ourselves kind of losing that feeling of love and intimacy that is special to a married couple. And sometimes it was more running through the motions, taking care of the kids, running the house, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I even felt like I got content with that because I didn't know what to do about it. So I was okay with it. I knew it wasn't good. I knew it's not where I needed to be, but I just gave up. And so that was not helpful.
Yeah, and I did the same. For a while it was just, I guess this is what there is.
Right.
And so we didn't have that, that example of how God challenges us to be in marriage set clearly in our minds for what could be better and what we should be doing. So the damage to our love was getting worse, by the day, right?
Mhm.
And so I found myself staring at a similar path in another struggling marriage where I wasn't meeting the needs of my wife, and we weren't connecting. And it's then that I realized, and I knew this academically, but it just really hit me. Just because you start over, and just because you try again, and just because you eliminate some of the problems that you experienced in a previous relationship, doesn't mean that suddenly everything's going to fall into place. Typically, it just means you're going to have different problems until you learn how to be that godly husband and wife to really work through whatever challenges you're facing. So, we tried. What did we try? We tried seminars, books, other resources that we had.
Yeah, we even went on our couples retreat that was done by I think a ministry, and they were good, but it was good. It was, but it's not anything that lasted for us. It was something that was like, okay, good, it might help for a month or two, but
Right.
it didn't last.
Yeah, I mean, so we were at times scrambling, and looking for different resources, what would help, and like Tanya said, we found some really good ones, but we didn't really implement them in a way that had lasting change, and so we'd be falling back into our old habits within a couple of months, and so I was hurting, I was frustrated. I think Tanya, you the same.
Yes.
But I mean, we were committed. I was definitely committed to keeping the marriage with Tanya, and committed to the promise that I'm not going to get divorced again. And that's really a personal thing between every person and God, trying to live out their lives His way. And so we kind of took a hard right turn, if you want to call it that, and went down the path to really focus on what can I do with myself as a man, as a husband, to really focus. And here's kind of some of the things I did, right? So first, I had to wake up and be totally honest about my marriage. I had to admit to myself, without excuses, without justifications, that my marriage was not where I wanted it to be. And I think that's important, because so many times we can just make excuses and we can accept it. Or like you said earlier, I guess this is what there is. And
Accept it.
Accept it. So secondly, I had to fully submit my marriage to God. So if I do that, that is the way in which then I can lead my wife to actually submit herself to me as her husband. Is I need to fully submit to God. And it's not that I wasn't pursuing God, but there was more I had to do in implementing that in a tangible way in my marriage. I had to learn more and change, and be willing to change and admit where I'd made mistakes. Another item, really just I committed to doing the hard work to develop a godly mindset for my role as husband, regardless of how Tanya lived out her role as my wife. I think that's important. We can't live our lives waiting on the other spouse to do something. We have to decide, okay, I'm going to change me, and God's going to help. I'm going to ask Him to help. And so I had to, take charge. I had to lead Tanya in a more loving way. I had to find different ways of communicating. I had to really become the man she wanted to follow. And another item that I just want to highlight is I had to get out of my own selfishness. Okay, and it's not that I was selfish in the way that I demanded everything my way, but we view the world through our own perspectives.
Yes.
And so I consider that, you could call it self-focus instead of selfishness. But I had to stop thinking about things through my own mind and my own perspective, and I had to be able to start understanding Tanya on a deeper level, so I could understand how she sees our relationship, how she sees me and my actions and my attitudes, so I can then be the husband she needs. And I'll be the first to tell you, and Tanya will be the second. Marriages don't transform overnight, but the further I went down this road to becoming a better man, to fixing myself, to becoming a better husband, Tanya began to see that and to respond. I didn't wait and say, okay, Tanya, tell me that you're going to come with me on this, and then well, we're going to go try and make a change. That's great if it happens, but oftentimes people end up not making any change at all because they're waiting for a guarantee before they start. Just start on yourself and walk that path with God. And then Tanya was responding. She saw the difference.
Yes. Because at first, like I said, I had pretty much just given up and just said, well, this is the way it's going to be. And, I wasn't going to leave the marriage, but I was content to be separated in my heart, I guess I would say, which is, it's not as bad as divorce, but it's pretty bad. It's going to lead to destruction. And even as a Christian, I didn't know how to get out of that. But as the Lord started speaking to John, and as he started coming to me and talking about our marriage, I saw that there were issues that we absolutely had to talk about. It was vital. And so I began to see changes in him as he submitted even more to God, especially regarding our marriage. And it caused me to see the difference in him, and for us to be able to start bonding more by talking about the issues that were so hard for us, so that we could go into unity again.
Yeah, that's so important. So eventually we sat down, we pulled together all these little seminars and books that we'd been trying and they hadn't lasted, but they were good. So we pulled them together. We developed a clear vision for our marriage. We created an actionable plan to achieve it. And we work to keep each other accountable, in a positive and constructive way. And so, really trying to ensure lasting transformation. And so we saw over several months, we put in the hard work. You don't always see the progress on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes it'll feel better, and then it'll feel like you went backwards a bit.
Yeah.
But after a couple of, hard months, we really started seeing substantial restoration and healing in our marriage. And that's when it gets easier. It doesn't always happen right up front, but after you're on the journey and you start to see those big changes and those big transformations, then it gets more encouraging and it can get a bit easier. And so we've kind of collected all these resources, and God kind of put that on our hearts to, okay, I've shown you this and I've led you through this. Now you need to help others. Now you need to help others to see what I've shown you and to help them restore their marriages. And so, we've kind of pulled this together, and we call it Marriage God's Way, with MAA, and that's mindset, action, and accountability. And we transformed our relationship, really big changes. We saw big change within 3 months. And it really made a big difference in terms of the intimacy and connection that we felt towards each other. Like Tanya mentioned, not being separated in the mind, even really thinking of each other in such a positive connection. And so that was really a big change, and more than we could have hoped for. If you'd looked 6 months earlier, we didn't even see that as a possibility. We had all kind of gotten complacent and said, I guess this is what there is. We're going to stick it out, but it's not everything God wanted it to be. So finally, you look at what does it look like now? Tanya, she's secure in our relationship, and so am I. And we've rekindled that special love and intimacy that you want when you get married. It's what you're looking for. It's where you're seeking each other out. It's the excitement you feel on your wedding night. You don't need to say, hey, that's my wife, that's my husband. Not like, oh, that's my wife, that's my husband. And so, we both truly strive to love and serve one another. We're not perfect. We don't get it right all the time. But we have a much better understanding of how to do that. And it makes our efforts more impactful. We have a clear vision for our marriage, and we know how to achieve it and maintain it. It keeps us in unity, working together. Even if we don't disagree on something, we can still be in unity. We understand that we're going to face challenges, but they don't define our relationship and our feelings towards each other anymore. Communication's never been better. We can. I really appreciate when Tanya, de-escalates and avoids unnecessary arguments. There's times where I may be having a hard time, and she steps in and just is supportive and avoids escalating into an unnecessary fight. And then I've learned to do the same, and it's so helpful. We have confidence we can solve any problem together. Tanya, this one, I think this is a really important one, is just you've learned to be really honest about your true feelings and desires, and without being intimidated or overpowered. Right. So important.
Yeah.
And I had a part to play in that, and so did she.
Yes.
We've learned to forgive quicker and heal from past hurts. That's important. We strive to serve one another rather than meet our own needs. And it's very natural to focus on your own needs, but forming that habit to focus on what they need is critical. And above all, we know that no matter what happens, spouse is not my enemy. Spouse is, my ally, is part of me. We're united in submission to God, and we fight off the enemy's attacks as one unit. So, I'd love to say, on one hand, we had a fairy tale marriage and everything just worked out beautifully with no struggle, but that's not the way it works in most cases. So the good news is God's allowed us to learn a lot, and now we're able to be helping others to go through that same transformation, that same healing with our Marriage God's Way with MAA program. So with God's help, we transformed our marriage from stumbling and struggling to thriving. We prayed, we trusted God, and we did the hard work. We both believe that if you want to transform your marriage, you have to do the hard work. You have to do the work to change. You can't just sit there and wait for something to happen to you. You've got to change how you're living out your role as a godly husband or wife. So, a couple of things I would say: stop trying to save your marriage on your own. Stop waiting for your spouse to take the lead or finally wake up. It only takes one to initiate a new marriage. And stop waiting on God to fix your marriage without you also taking decisive action to change your habits and your attitude towards your spouse. Yes, get God's help. Yes, do it with Him. Don't sit back in the bleachers and wait for Him to do it for you with no involvement of your own. Get started, seek Him out, and He'll help you. So another way of saying that is pray like it's up to God and work like it's up to you. We believe no marriage is hopeless.
Right.
God can make a way where we can't.
Yeah.
So if you're tired of the frustration, the pain, and the struggles in your marriage, if you yearn for a transformation that goes beyond temporary fixes, it's time to take decisive action. Our journey from a failed marriage to a thriving, enduring love story was not without challenges, but it was a journey worth taking. And at Solid Rock Marriage Restoration, we understand the complexities of relationships. We've been where you are. We know the despair of a failing marriage. We understand the joy of turning it around through hard work, commitment, a renewed mindset, and faith in God. And so our proven approach, Marriage God's Way with MAA, is not just a set of principles. It's a roadmap to guide you from where you are now to where you want to be. We lived it. We're helping others to successfully navigate their own transformations. So if you're ready to break the cycle of frustration, miscommunication, drifting apart, that's a silent one. That one sneaks up on you. Yeah. And just visit our website, solidrockmarriagerestoration.com. Take the first step towards your marriage on fire and rewriting your love story. Now, this is where, a marriage where a communication is strong, forgiveness is quick, love and intimacy are rekindled. Don't wait for your spouse or for to take the lead. Don't wait for circumstances to magically change on their own. Don't wait to just feel like it, because sometimes you got to get started and lead your heart and not wait till you feel like it, because sometimes you may not feel like it, but it's the right thing to do. So you're transforming your marriage starts with you. Stop trying to do it your own way. If you're struggling, if you need help, it's not a sign of weakness to get help. It's a sign of strength. So start the journey towards lasting change. So I guess what we'd say here is, may the grace and peace of God be with you. What are you waiting for? Go and love your spouse and transform your marriage today. Bye. God bless.